Ladies and gentlemen, this is our session 2 for 9th of October, 12:30 session. Our title of this session is History, Legacy of Indenture and Construction of Identities. First of all, let me welcome you all to this session of the conference. We have a number of presenters in this session. We have seven presentations and pretty interesting ones. Without taking much of your time, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start with the first presentation by Vishnu Bisram from Guyana, and the title of his paper is "The Evil of Banning Bread and Roti in Ghana." Vishnu. Vishnu, we can't hear you. Vishnu, we can't hear you.
Unmute. Okay, how about now?
All right, you have between 15 to 20 minutes to do your presentation.
All right, so I'm having some problems with my video, so you may not be able to see me. I'm using my hand phone, and I will have to hold the hand phone. I'm going to try to see if I could put it somewhere where I could actually present. There we go.
All right.
So my presentation is on the food ban in Guyana. Now I call it the roti and bread ban because in Guyana during the period 1970 to 1987-88, many basic foods were banned from consumption and from importation in Guyana. And among these food items were flour, potatoes, or aloo as we call it, split peas or dal, chana, onion, garlic, and a number of other items. And in addition to items that were banned, certain items were not imported even though they were not on the banned list. For example, ghee, agarbatti, camphor, a number of spices, a number of religious paraphernalia that are used in puja and as well as in Quran Sharif and Christian services among Indians. Now, the Indians perform their services quite differently from the other religious denominations. Even though the Indians may be Christians, their services are quite different from because it's kind of Hindu influenced. Similarly with some aspects of Islam. And so these items are very critical and crucial for observances among the Indian population. And so the banning of these food I refer to as being evil because there was an evil intention in banning them. And these goods were not only banned from importation, they were banned from consumption. And if caught with these items, they carry very hefty fines and imprisonment. And many, many Indians are known to have been imprisoned in Guyana. Now, the police usually make raids in stores and in markets, as well as at wedding houses, whether they were Hindu weddings, Christian weddings, or Islamic weddings, because the government, the police knew the Indian community would serve aloo curry and roti and pulauri and sahina, kachori, chana, dal, and all these other items that are very, very, very critical at any religious function by Indians. And very often they would haul away, the police would haul away these items as evidence. And in many, many cases, before the police make their raid and the hosts know that the police are coming, they would quickly assemble all of the food and take them to neighbors to be kept, or they would dump them in latrines or drains or sewers so that they would not be found. I personally observed bread being dumped in trenches and rivers. I saw them floating away. When the police came, people had to dump these items. So what was the intention of banning these goods? The government claimed that they needed to ban the goods because there was a shortage of foreign currency. Well, that may very well be the case, as it was during these oil shocks when there was a shortage of foreign currency. But these Indians or whatever other ethnic groups were prepared to purchase these items and bring them in using the personal foreign exchange. And people like me who were visiting Guyana and others by the tens of thousands were willing to take flour or bread or potatoes or onions and garlics and ghee and so forth, but the government wouldn't allow it. So it could not be that the intention was just foreign currency shortage or to save foreign currency. And if that were the case, why then did the government fund money to import weapons? Why did the government fund money to have lavish events? Why did the government send went on these many escapades to Australia and other places and conferences and chartered jets? All of these cost foreign currency. So for me, my argument is that the government had a very evil policy. There was an evil intention of banning these various food items and religious items because its intention was to deculturize the Indian community, to creolize the Indian community, to get them away from their heritage, culture, civilization, religion. The banning of basic foods goes against the grain of the United Nations Charter, UNESCO Charter, where it is considered to be a violation of human rights to prevent people from consuming the cultural food and to practice their faith in good faith. No one should be denied the opportunity to have access to religious items so that they could carry out the religious practices, or to consume food, or forced to consume food, or have food not available that would subscribe to their cultural and religious diet. So there has not been any academic studies on the banning of food in Guyana. And so therefore, accessing materials is very, very difficult. Only some items appeared in the mass media in Guyana from which I sourced materials, and the other source of materials in my personal experience, as well as my travels around the country during the 70s and 1980s, and subsequently after the ending of the ban, interviewing and talking to people about the impact of the food ban on Guyanese. And basically that is my argument, that the food ban in Guyana is evil, and that is why I so entitled it, The Evil Behind the Food and Roti Ban, behind the roti and bread ban, because flour is used not just for roti but in bread as well. And while the bread is consumed mostly by non-Indians, and Indians also consume bread, but I grew up in a rural community, and most rural people up until the 1980s hardly ate bread. They ate roti, whether it was for breakfast, lunch, or dinner in many, many cases. And so Indians had to turn to other items like cassava, which really is not the same as bread. And even cassava violates the religious principles and practices of Indians when flour and other items are needed for whether it is for the cremation of the dead or for various rites from birth to death. And that essentially is my argument, in which the methodology is used is basically primary sources, since secondary sources are not available. Thank you, Sunil. Sunil?
Yeah. Thank you, Vishnu. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think you have brought out a very sensitive and, what can I say? Brilliant issue of what probably happened in the past in Guyana. And also there are other issues going on right now. And you might actually be able to answer those questions that arise from this. We will move on. We will have question and answers at the end of the session. So I will invite Achal and Ashna, Achal, Ashna and Manisha. Are you there?
I don't think both of them are there.
Both of them are there. Okay, so both of them are from the University of Fiji. The title of the presentation is Strategies Utilized by Early Migrants to Adapt to Psychological, Social, and Linguistic Changes. Yes, can we start? Have your presentation, please, Achal?
They're not there, sorry.
Oh, they're not there. Okay. Maybe they'll come in later on. So we'll move to the next one, which is Meliki, Kuricava, and Tasmeen Nisha. Are you there? I think Meliki is there.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. You are also from University of Fiji, and your title is
Yes,
Adopting to the Home. And there you are.
To correct you, sir, our title is also on the theme constructions of identities. So we have picked the question, how did the early migrants adapt psychologically, linguistically, and socially to their new homeland? So we have to pick this question, sir. So once again, Bula Vinaka, everyone. My partner and I, Miss Tasmeen, will be presenting on the given themes, construction of identities, and our presentation is based on this question. How did the early migrants adapt psychologically, linguistically, and socially to the new homeland? So in these presentations, we look at the state of mind, the state of mind of the early migrants and how they have adapted in terms of language, they learn language, and also how they have mingled with each other or socialized with each other. So I'm sorry, there's no, some issues here with our presentation, but I'll verbally present our presentation this afternoon. And the abstracts that we have submitted, it talks about that the early migrants arrived in Fiji from 1879 to 1960 under the indenture labor system. So the purpose of this presentation is simply to explore the struggles and view the lands from the early migrants' point of view as to how they have adapted to these three factors, psychologically, linguistically, and socially into their new homeland called Fiji. So, however, they had to adapt to the new language spoken by the foreigners, and those are the British people, and also the Girmitians also raised their voice in and fought for the freedom, and fought for their freedom in order to adapt socially into Fiji's context. Moving on. So the first part that I will be talking to you this afternoon is in terms of psychological factor. So this, I can say that these early migrants, they were lured. Yes, they were lured by the British agents because probably the British agents, I think they made promises to this to the early migrants because at that time they were illiterate. They cannot read and they cannot even write. So whatever they heard from the British people, it sounds good to them, and that's why they have made a decision to leave their motherland and to come to their new homeland, which is called Fiji. So they were promised wealth and freedom. So in that part, their state of mind starts to think, yes, we will go there because we'll have this, we'll have the wealth and the money, and also we have freedom. That's why they did come to Fiji. So also the boat that took them from their journey took them 3 months. So before they even reach Fiji, I'm talking about the psychological factor here. So before they even reach Fiji, throughout their journey, it's like there wasn't any medical attention given to them, and then they can see the reality of what is happening. So I think the positive mindset that they left India now have changed because of the things that they are seeing while in their journey. Even before they reach Fiji, it's just throughout the journey, most of them died. So most of them died because they were not given medical attention, and even the food. So their mind starts to deteriorate. Starts to turn from positive to negative. So that's one of the psychological factor. Talking back about the promise, the wealth and freedom, see, from everything that the British people told them, that you will have this freedom, you will have wealth. See, they must have left India with a vision to build up a better future based from what they have heard, from the information that has given to them. And also the contract that was given to them at that particular time, it was within 5 years. So they think, okay, it's just 5 years. After 5 years, we can return back to our motherland. But then what happened? That they were prevented from returning back to India. They were prevented by the colonial government of Fiji, and also the colonial sugar refining company in Australia, because they have seen that the early migrants, they have worked so hard, they have sweat every day, they did their job diligently. While I was researching, and I saw that one male should fill up 3 trucks of sugar cane. They need to fill it up. If they don't fill it up, they will get it from the British people. So now we'll have to look at their psychological state. So they are struggling. They are struggling, and their mind is not. I think they are. It's not stable at that time, because they were looked at as if they were a machine to wake up early in the morning, 4 o'clock, and to do all these things and go. Like sometimes they have only one meal a day. So then after that, after all the hard works that they have done, and they will go back to sleep. So imagine what they have been going through at that time. So these are some of the contributing factors I can say that really affected their psychological state. One is the inspection safeguard. The inspection safeguard were inadequate, and immigrants found it difficult to secure redress in the courts. Like I've said, they were just, I could say, I'm sorry, they were treated like, they were treated inhumanely. They were treated on some sort of, I don't want to say the word, but they were poorly treated. They were poorly treated. And there wasn't any rules that governed them while they were there. And also, another point is that assaults and excessive number of prosecutions were serious problems. Yes, because they have to probably fight or some rape or something, sexual harassment happening there, because there are so many people living under one roof. And the food and medical attentions were inadequate over most of the period. Like I've said, they probably eat once in a day, and sometimes they go without food because of the heavy work that was given to them. And I can say that their mental state is not. Their mental state is not good, and they have been suffering a lot through the ordeal through their time coming to Fiji. And for for the linguistic factor, they have learned, like, since all of them come from a different caste, they have their own language, they have their own dialect. When they come to Fiji, they don't. When they come to Fiji, they are looked as like they are one group. So they tend to learn each other's dialect in order to communicate and in order to help each other, because they are in a foreign land. And also, I can see the intermarriage, the inter-caste marriage, like a female from another caste and a male married to each other, and from that they tend to learn each other's language. And the development of a new Koine language known as Fiji Hindi, formed from the Hindi dialect of Eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, mainly Awadhi and Bhojpuri, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm so sorry. So from there, they developed the Fiji Hindi dialect, which is the lingua franca between Fijians and not only Fijians, but Fijians and Itaukei also nowadays. So through that intermarriage, they tend to learn each other's language first internally before they learn the foreign language externally, like the language given by the British people. And now I have to given this platform to my partner, Mr. Tasmeen. She will present on the social part.
Thank you. Thank you, Meliki. Tasmeen, you can start now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Meliki. Also, I did not have access, apologies, I did not have access to the audio and video, and now I have access, so I will be able to present. Let me just quickly share our screen, and then we can continue. Meliki, are you able to see the screen?
Yeah, I think it's coming.
Okay, thank you,
sir. It's not showing right now, but I think it's coming. It says that Tasmeen has started sharing, but it's not showing up. Ranjit, would you be able to help, please?
The connection might be a bit slow, so we just have to wait.
Okay, I will just start while it is coming up. The positive impact of the Girmit system was that there was an end to the caste system. This end had started when the Girmitians boarded the ships which took them to Fiji, right? The Girmitians were forced, they were from different caste systems, and they were forced to stay together in these crammed ships. Upon arrival to Fiji, the Girmitians were given small rooms where they had to stay, and there these rooms were accommodated with 3 men and 3 women. Upon arrival, the Girmitians were again forced to stay in small rooms, and these rooms were known as coolies. They were randomly chosen to stay in these coolies. People from different caste systems lived together. Thus, we have end to the caste system. This is how the caste system ended. Adapted linguistically, they also, when the Girmitians came to Fiji, they also adapted. They had to adapt linguistically. The Indenture system had 2 positive effects on subsequent generation. People from different castes live and work together, led to an end of the caste system. Also, there was a development in the new Koine language known as Fiji Hindi, formed from Hindi dialects of Eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. The language was further enriched by the inclusion of many Fijian and English words. The language is now, this Fiji Hindi is now the mother tongue of almost all Fiji Indians and is the lingua franca of not only Fiji Indians, but also all communities where ethnic Indians are in a majority.
Yeah, Tasmeen, go ahead, please.
So something has happened to my system.
All right, you can go ahead, no worries.
Okay, we were actually told that our recorded presentation would be played. Meliki, are you able to see the screen now?
No.
Okay, they adapted linguistically and they also adapted socially, right? So end of the caste system, they were forced to stay together where these ships were full of people. Upon arrival, they were forced to stay together. The natives even helped the Germitiers, right? So at one point in time, the natives were helping the Germitiers and the Germitiers were also helping the natives in terms of supplying them with food, right? They have difficulty adapting to the situation also. I had come across a story whereby one of the Girmitiers had no food left in his home and had asked from one of the natives, and they had boiled him some cassava, and because of he did not commit suicide. Right, so they had difficulty adapting to the situation, and also there was a lot of suicides happening during this time, and they started committing suicide. The real reason was due to cultural and social disruptions, because they were now they were in Fiji and they had difficulty adapting to their new homeland. They felt the trauma brought by social dislocation within the harsh environment, right? Because they had to work from the morning until they ran out of breath. There was no in regard, they did not have an 8 to 4 job whereby you start 8 in the morning and then you end at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. However, they kept on working until they got tired, and that is when they were taken back to their coolies. And so they had to adapt to this situation. In conclusion, I can say that the Girmitiers played an important role in the development of Fiji's economy. They accommodated themselves psychologically, linguistically, and socially to their new home, which is Fiji, right? Which was Fiji. Those who stayed did so because of new kinship ties and enhanced economic and social opportunities. Most of them settled on the lands as farmers, prospered and progressed. The majority of the Indo-Fijians are direct descendants of these exiled Girmitiers of Fiji. This is my reference and questions. The floor is open for questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Meliki and Tasmeen. I think despite the difficulty, you have done well. Thank you very much. We now have Achal, Ashna, and Manisha. We would want Achal and Manisha to start their presentation now.
Good
Achal,
afternoon, everyone. Manisha and I will be doing our presentation now. Apologies for not being able to log in before. Our abstract is, our topic is about the adaptation methods used by the indentured laborers to adjust to the three basic and the three aspects of their new changes, and those are social, psychological, and linguistic changes. Despite various researches done by many scholars on early migrants, little is known about strategies utilized by them to adapt to their new homelands. Drifting to a new land makes it difficult for migrants to adapt to social, psychological, and linguistic changes. Upon adapting to these new changes, immigrants accept this new place as their new homes. How did the Indian indentured laborers adapt to their new homes? What were the strategies used by them to be part of the foreign land? Individuals who migrate experience multiple stresses that can impact their mental well-being, including the loss of cultural norms, religious customs, and social support systems, and adjustments to new culture and changes in identity and concept of self. Indeed, the rates of mental illness are increased in some migrant groups. It becomes extremely difficult for immigrants to adapt the linguistic change as well. This study highlights and uncovers that both linguistic and social aspect is needed to absorb in the homeland psychologically. In our paper, our qualitative research will focus on various adaptive methods used by the immigrants in order to adjust in their new homelands. Manisha and I will be discussing this paper now. Now I would like to request my partner Manisha to focus on the social changes.
Thank you, Achal. I would focus on the social changes. So as you know, our paper is mainly talking about the psychological, the social, and the linguistic changes encountered by the indentured laborers when they first arrived in Fiji. So the first social change, it can be said that the best strategy to utilize to adapt to the social change Okay. So it can be said that the best strategy that one can utilize to adapt to this social change is getting involved in the work environment and adjusting to it. And this strategy was applied by the indentured laborers as well, and they managed to overcome this social change. The next strategy that we have discussed is staying focused. So if we compare that time to our time, it can be said that our environment that we are in, it helps us to be more focused. So back then, the indentured laborers, it became very hard for them to stay focused, but and since the indentured laborers were new to this environment, it became very hard for them to maintain their focus, but they remained focused because it was very important for them to adjust to that environment socially. Doing this mainly stopped them from participating in any activities that was constructed as social inequalities. The next social strategy that we have stated in our paper is accepting cultural differences. Comparing this time with the time of the Gilmits, the world has tremendously changed, and we can see that because of globalization, of course, and the current workforce includes employees of different cultural backgrounds, but back then it was very hard to accept the cultural differences. So if we see today and compare it to the time when the Gilmitians arrived in Fiji, Here today, we work with people who are of different races, they follow different culture, and we are able to mingle around with them easily. But back then, it was very hard to work with someone who is an Indian, maybe, who is a Muslim, who is a Bihari, just an example. And it was very hard for them, of course. So how did the Girmitians manage? The indentured laborers did go about learning the language of the people and understood the environment they were in, because language is the main factor needed to be able to get accepted anywhere. And this is the point that Achal and I strongly agree with, because if we know the language of the particular environment where we are in, we are able to absorb socially and psychologically as well. And the last one is simply staying focused, which helped them to adapt and adopt to their new homelands. Now, Achal will talk on the linguistic and the psychological change. Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha. I will focus on the psychological changes first. As everyone knows, psychological deals with our minds and thoughts. As Girmitians, the very first thing they got to know was that Fiji was way away from their homeland. They were fooled and they were misguided as that they're going to a different place, and they were not given the right information. Therefore, when they reached Fiji, the very first thing they got to know about the place, and which was a very difficult task. It's not easy for anyone to adjust in a place all of a sudden. So were our indentured laborers. They first worked on knowing their language. They came from different part of the world, and they had no idea what languages the other one is speaking. So they learned each other's language first, and then a combination of those languages, those dialects, became a new dialect that is known as Fiji Hindi now. With the psychological change, the very hard thing that the difficult one, the challenges they faced was to stay away from their loved ones. Not everyone came with their family. They were staying with strangers, and they were living in a place, as Tasmeen has said, they were living with coolies and other indentured laborers. Not knowing a person and living with that person is very difficult. And our indentured laborers, they improved and they enhanced their self-esteem. And through that, they made themselves so strong that they were able to endure all of this. And these are the values that majority of us would need now. They were strong, they were flexible, and also they had a hope, they had a will to work it out. Before I conclude, I would like to thank my partner Manisha for helping me with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Achal.
All right. Thank you, Achal and Manisha. Yeah, it was an excellent presentation. We would now move to the next one. We don't have Mansraj Ramphul with us. In case he joins later on, we'll have him present. We'll move on to Lomarsh Roopnarine. Lomarsh, are you there? Okay, excellent. So you may go ahead, please. Yeah, we can't hear you at the moment, Lomarsh. Your mic is off.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Greetings. My name is Lomarsh Roopnarine, and I'm from Guyana. However, I'm stationed here at Jackson State University in the United States. Let me first of all apologize because I was under the impression that the recordings would be used for the presentation, but I realized that I should have read my email more carefully. Nevertheless, I will provide some basic points of my presentation, and so that it will work for the meanwhile. And I refer you to the recording that I think is already posted on the website. Now, my topic or my paper revolves around a biography of a fellow by the name of Balgobin Prasad. Now, before I proceed with his biography, I would like to share a few things first. Over the years, many years, I've been writing on indenture, and I've come to realize that much work has been done looking at the broader aspects of indenture and also the negative aspects of indenture. And I thought that the minor aspects of indenture, like biographies, have been buried in the larger history. So I think it's important to uncover or unearth biographies to give a sort of a balanced approach or a balanced story or narrative to the indentured experience. And so some 10 years ago, I was doing research at the Guyana National Archives in Georgetown, where I ran into this fella, Balgobin Prasad, who I call the iconic Babu. Babu, you know, is a sort of a nice name, a sort of a romantic name, but yet a one that shows a lot of potential. And so I was very impressed with him and information, and was limited, but nevertheless, I thought I should explore him some more. So about 3 years ago, I wrote an article in the Guyana Times when I was writing for that newspaper, and the short article resonated widely, so much so that it caught an attention of a fellow in England named Mr. Sundar Singh, and he was interested in Balgobin's life. And so he did some research there, and he gathered a number of information to me from the archives. He had contacted a few universities there. I was able to send this information to me, which I'm using now, plus what I've done over the years to present to you. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Singh, Sundar Singh. Now, Balgobin Prasad is a rather unusual individual during the indenture period. He did not work on a plantation anymore where he was born. So his parents did. And his parents broke out of the indenture system and became a shopkeeper. So Balgobin born into a home whereby his parents were making that transition from plantation life to a sort of independent life. But they still had that connection back with Enmore because the entire environment revolved around plantation life. But at the age of 12, this fellow here passed what is called a common entrance exam, an exam that every kid at the age of 10 or 12 writes, and if they pass, they attend the highest high school in the nation. Well, Balgobin Prasad did pass that exam and attended Queen's College. Now, Queen's College is not really a college as we know it, like a sort of a four-year college. It was a really reputable high school, one of the best in the nation. So what I'm alluding to in my research and by implication, Balgobin might have been the first Indian who attended this prestigious high school, first Indian during indenture. To recall, Indians arrived in Guyana in 1838, and the indenture system was abolished in 1920. So about close to 800 years, not one Indian, according to my research, and I believe what I've seen, had attended. So this figure here, this guy here, was very smart, but he was breaking that historical narrative of negativity that Indians were all bound to this plantation. And we had come to accept that, at least during the indenture period. Not only the Indians, but the entire plantocracy, the overlords, the planters, the managers. So Balgobin here, it was a sort of iconic figure in terms of he's the first one to break out, but he might have been seen as a sort of a model where all the children were trying to mimic him or try to emulate him to get into Queen's College. So again, I'm emphasizing his young life because Again, I've not read information on him elsewhere. Now, when he attended Queen's College, about in 1917, he passed about 6 subjects. One was gospel and things related to Christianity, but he also passed English language, which was a big thing in Guyana, passed French, Latin, and mathematics. And so he was then given a scholarship, which is then called the Guyana Scholarship, a scholarship that's given to one person every year, a sort of standing person. And so he won that scholarship and then went on to England to study law at Middle Temple. Now, what all this sort of passing is telling us that this young man is not only brilliant, he's crossing borders, significant borders that were really barriers to Indians. And he was not doing that in terms of buying his way. He was doing that based on the capacity, knowledge. And so then that tells us that there might have been other people like Balgobin Prasad, who in the process of trying to make the journey like Balgobin Prasad was drowned out because of the nature of the plantation system. So then studying Balgobin Prasad might unravel other aspects of indenture that I've not read in a compelling manner when compared to other aspects of indenture. I'm not saying other aspects, written aspects of indenture are not impressive. It's very impressive, but we need to move it beyond that sort of boundary, if I can use that word. So he attended a college. The information got kind of confusing once he got to England. And one information saying that he went to Clare College and finished a bachelor's degree. Clare College is sort of branch of Cambridge College, Cambridge University rather. And then he attended Middle Temple, the law school, and he dropped out. He signed, he put out a petition that he could not continue. I do not know why he could not continue, but I'll give you some reasons in a minute. But what is this telling us? It's telling us this young man, horizon had expanded from the plantation to Queen's College, now to England. But at some point he lost it. He lost it. And I begin to wonder really what happened to him. Did he really suffer a nervous breakdown, given the fact that he was peddling a sort of journey no one has ever done in his background, even though there were people to help him in that process? I can't imagine a kid coming from a plantation environment and end up in England at one of the best law school, peddling this sort of journey by himself. It must have had some sort of impact on him. So I'm discovering, I'm researching to see what actually happened. And if I may go forward a little bit, fast forward, I'm reading works of Naipaul and a few others, their experience overseas, punctuate my point to a degree that he might have gone through some hard times. And he left, but I'm trying to figure out where he left to and what happened to him. So I am in process of researching this young man some more to bring out a sort of an alternative narrative to the indenture system, really from inception, if I want to use from his childhood on to, say, early adulthood, to demonstrate that the indenture system might have been bad or was bad, but there's some other aspects to it that we need to discover some more by evidence to show there were people there who had agency, people who use agency to break new grounds, barriers, and overcome that authoritarian system. So much so that the end result of this presentation or my upcoming article on this young man will send a message to the younger generation that listen, you know, there are many more things, many more events to this indenture system that eventually encourage others to explore this avenue so that we can have a more accurate, if not a more balanced narrative of our indentured experience. And I shall stop there. But before I do so, I am working again on producing an article. And so that by early next year, I think I'll finish this article and send it up or out for publication. Let me say one more thing. I'm also working on another biography. I discovered a young woman during intention in Danish West Indies in United States, in Croy. And so I have a lot of information on her. So I had wanted to present both biographies in this presentation, but I realized was, you know, it would take up too much time. So, you know, thank you very much in conclusion for listening, and thank you all. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Lomarsh. That was an excellent presentation. We will now move on. The next presenter on the list is Mansraj Ramphul. I think he's not here. If he's not here, then we would go on to Makareta, and I think Makareta is also not there. So we would go to the last one, which is presentation by myself, Manpreet, and Avitesh. Do the current generation of Indo-Fijians identify with their Girmit heritage? Now, unfortunately, Manpreet is not there, who was supposed to do the presentation. So I think I will do the presentation now. And a bit strange, but it's all right. I think I can do that. Ranjit, can you help me get onto this? Oh. Ranjit, I need to come out of this. Ranjit, can you? Okay, I think I have to load. Oh my God, okay. No, I think I have to load my presentation. This is not the one. Ranjit, this is not the one. I have to, because it was, sorry, I have to go and fetch my presentation. I need to come out of this. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay. I think it is here. I think so. It is here. All right. All right. It's coming. All right. Okay. Can you see the slides now? Hello, Ranjit, can you?
Yeah, we can see it, except for it's just still single screen.
Okay.
Double screen, I meant. Let me try and make it a single screen view.
You want the, okay, I'm giving you approval to, yeah, okay. Can you do that now? Is Is it okay? All right. Okay. I'll go back. Thank you very much, Ranjit, for the assistance. Our presentation is on the identity of Indo-Fijians, titled "Do the Current Generation of Indo-Fijians Identify with..." I can't read this bit. All right, identify with their Gimit heritage. All right, our presentation is in this order. A brief introduction. Is there an identity crisis among Indo-Fijians? What is the common narrative about identity confusion? Data analysis. We have done primary field survey on this, and I'm going to do presentation of the data analysis to come to draw some conclusions. All right. All right. How can I hide this? No, I cannot hide this. All right. Okay. The definition of identity. This is something is well known, globally well known, and those who are working in this discipline would know what identity issues are. By profession, I'm not a social scientist of that sort. I'm an economist. Nonetheless, I have some real life experiences in this. So identity is something that is that we deal with on day-to-day basis. There are different shades of identities, as you would know. It could start with the family. Family acquiring certain names or certain known, strata or social status or things like that. And then we have nationality, we have gender, we have ethnicity, caste, subcaste, religion, profession. All these things constitute identities that people carry with them. Right, and different people will carry different shades of these identities. In Fiji, we identify people a little bit with geography. Even when we are a small country, we still have that geographical identification. Like people from another island, Vanuatu, we refer to them as Lambasians. Sometimes in negative connotation, and sometimes within the context of people from Vanuatu is taken in a positive sense. Goinya means people who are coming from village, and sometimes it refers to as people who are stupid or something like that. So these are identities. It could be negative, it could be positive, and of course there are other ways in which we could identify people. All right, is there an identity crisis? I'm not able to read on the top of the slide. Are Indo-Fijians confused about their identity? About Fijianness, about Indianness? There has been some degree of discussion at the national level as to whether Indo-Fijians, the Girmitias, the descendants of Girmitias, are identifying themselves as part of this country. And so we thought we should try and test it out, by doing some field survey about this issue. According to our analysis, we find that there's no confusion at all. There's no issue, no big issue at all. The Indo-Fijian younger generation are very clear what their identities are. They're not confused. So this is what our data tells us. So we would perhaps want to go on to figure out what are some of the identifiers, some of the negatives or some of the positives even are being projected out. So these are the kinds of questions that are often asked or said. We Indians are born with a stick to poke, and often referring to the internal social mechanisms where we would be seen as criticizing each other or fighting within. So that's the kind of connotation that comes out of, you know, in the social context. We do not help each other. You know, these are the kinds of things. Oh, because we are this, we let others dominate. Okay. Oh, because we are Indians. Oh, we can do this because this has been asked to do. Something like that. We are politically divided. Is there a north-south within Indian community? There are different, smaller divisions. So, is there a north-south identity divide? Are there religious divisions? These are the questions that we would want to ask and perhaps want to know. Are there geographical identity divisions? And we were trying to raise this in political sense, in terms of, political outcomes. The answers, some of the answers that we tried to figure out on these questions, we Indians are born with a stick to poke. Well, we thought, in a way, yes. We are critical of each other. It is not necessarily a bad thing, because there are internal mechanisms or self-corrective mechanisms, which is a good thing for a society or a community. Not we do not help each other. That's entirely incorrect. That's not true at all. We often give out our hearts whenever there is difficulty, whenever there's a problem. Not only within, but we extend. We are indifferent to color, ethnicity, religion, or whatever. We provide help. We provide assistance open-heartedly to everyone. That's the beauty of that Girmitia community. Three. We let others dominate. Not true at all. We don't let anybody dominate anybody. All right. We are politically divided. Yes, I think we are politically divided. But not entirely on any specific division. We argue, and we have realized that this division that may be there is because of independence, individual independence of people who are individual thinkers. Okay, so political divisions exist, but not entirely a bad thing. Five, is there north-south divide? It's possible, but seems quite mild. Okay, so there's huge intermarriage interactions. There's no sharp division as such. But I think there is some room for research on that question. Are we religiously divided? To some extent, yes. But no, I don't think there's any confrontational issue out here. And are there geographical divisions? Yes, but not harmful. I think there's a positive, positive vector on this. That even if there are divisions, it is taken in a positive and a social sense. But you would also find there are some serious statements being made. This statement I came across recently amongst some discussions going on internet, and this was prominent. I confronted the person who was saying this. I said, no, my research is not finding this. He said, there is little pride in Girmitia community, no pride for their history and heritage. Just individualists living and then dying, leaving nothing behind nothing for their succeeding generations. So, this statement is coming out from somebody very prominent, in fact, my great friend, but I confronted him to say, no, this is not true. So our research is showing, on the contrary, that younger generation Indo-Fijians, Girmitia community are very proud of their heritage. This is far from truth. So let us look at the survey. This was our survey. We surveyed 100 people only. This is a very small field survey done. We are going to extend this ahead and capture a bigger number. But we were looking at younger Indo-Fijians between the age of 25 and 35. And I think it was something like even 18 and 40, okay? I think that is what we should include in our sample. That's the composition. We had 54% students, some teachers, and other lot of people like, carpenters, salespeople, accountants, and so on. And then 63% had secondary education, 37% had tertiary education. They had some kind of tertiary training. So we see that this is a fairly good, composition of reflective of the Indo-Fijian, young Indo-Fijian society. Now, the question that we put on the questionnaire, what is your preferred identity? If you can see this, 71% said they are Fijian. 20% said they are Fijian Indians, and then a little bit said they were South or North or Christian or Muslim, like that. So, from this, you can clearly see that young Indo-Fijians are identifying with the place of their birth, place of their country, which is Fiji. There's no questions about that at all. Then we wanted to know whether they are, proud of their history and they know something about the history. And we raised this question, do you know what is Syria Jahaz about? 92% were dead on to answer that question. And, the rest 8% kind of fizzled out. So 92% reflects that 9 out of 10 probably are very much aware of what history of Girmitia history is. On this question, can you name the first boat that brought indentured Indians to Fiji? Again, 92% answered correctly. The rest 8% sort of fizzled out. On this question of who brought in Indians to Fiji, 99% said, that it was British government. So there's no confusion. That means they know it very clearly what their heritage is. All right. Do you feel proud and endowed that you are born as a Girmitia descendant? 99% of this, young people said yes. All right. So you can imagine when we say, oh, these young blokes have no pride in them about their culture, about this, about that. That's not true. All right. What do you think of Girmitias? And this is kind of distributed response we had. Worked hard, 30%, sacrificed, 20%, made Fiji successful. Often these kinds of statement is being, comes out in their daily lives, in reportings, in discussions and so on. So this is a perfect reflection of what younger generation Indians, Girmitias think. Do you think Girmitias should be recognized for their contribution? 100% without question said yes. And in my other, recorded presentation, I talked about our, Girmit, Fiji, Girmit Center. Girmit Center is a monument in a way. It was donated by the Indian government and sanctioned by the Fijian government at that time, 1980s, I guess. But that outfit is sitting there idle, not being used so well. I don't think younger generation, we will try and put this question to them in the next round of, survey, whether they know what Girmit Center is. So, in my experience, that Girmit Center out there, which is a huge, outfit, is sitting there doing almost nothing. And I don't think younger generations would be able to identify themselves with that. That's the sad part. So we would even want to, Global Girmit Institute would probably want to take this up. And we want to see what can come out of it. Do you think their hard work made you a better person? 100% said yes. So what is the problem with the Girmitias identifying themselves with their heritage? I find that absolutely fascinating, very striking, that we have Indo-Fijians in this country. Young, probably they are, amiss with history, but they know perfectly well what their heritage is. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my presentation. If there's any question, I would be willing to answer happily. Thank you. And I'll resume my chairmanship of the session. Thank you. Ranjit, please. Yeah, okay. Manpreet has come in now. Okay. All right. Your mic is off. Your mic is off.
Hello, Professor. Thank you so much for stepping in. It took me a while to connect via my phone. So thank you so much for taking us through the presentation.
Yes, yes. Please go ahead and say your bit. I think everybody wants to listen to what you want to say.
No, I'm just saying thank you so much for taking us through the presentation. It took me a while to connect because I'm using my smartphone. So thank you for taking us through the presentation. And if people have any questions, I think there are some questions that's being asked. So probably I can always write it down for those who have sent in their questions. I can always leave a comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Manpreet. Now let me figure out if Mansraj Ramphul is around, or if Makareta Mila is around. I'm not sure, but I think they're not. So we shall now proceed. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening. And my thanks to all those who have presented, taken out their time to be here with us. We do have a few questions. I think there might be some live questions coming around, but I will try and skip through or go right up to search for any questions. There are no directed questions except for one I could see. Okay, Achal, what is the difference between Fiji Hindi and Hindi taught in schools? This question was posed by Mr. Satya Dutt. Would you be able to respond to this, please? Achal, are you there?
Achal is not there.
Oh, okay, okay. So do we have anyone from language side? Maybe Manpreet would be able to answer this. Manpreet, you are a language person. Manpreet has some disappeared. Maybe the phone connection. Rajni is there. Rajni is in the audience, maybe. She is not. All right. Is there someone who is? No. Okay. Kamala is there. Kamala can answer that question. Kamala,
yes.
please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon to everyone. Sunil, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. It's
all right.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Yes, my apologies that Ashna is not there. I think she's having connectivity problem. But the Hindi taught at schools are what is called standard Hindi. And that standard Hindi has grammar aspect of it, and they speak grammatically correct Hindi. With Fiji Hindi does not have a precise grammar component in it, and it is spoken and people are able to understand without the grammar component. So that is the difference between Fiji Hindi and the standard Hindi taught in secondary school. Fiji Hindi is what we call the conversational Hindi that is now being taught to students. Ethoke students do conversational Hindi and Indian students are doing conversational Fijian. Thank you.
Oh, all right, Kamala, thank you so much. Satya is there. Hi, Satya. Would you want to?
Yes, I would like to come in here. So thank you very much for giving this opportunity. And I have been following this with great interest because my area is Hindi Bhasha in New Zealand here. और क्या होता है, we have like two different spectrums, Fiji Hindi and the Hindi which is being taught in schools. Now the Hindi which is being taught in schools the curriculum has been developed by Ministry of Education, and that has been going on for last 100 or more years. And the curriculum and everything is based on the Fiji environment, and the books and the resources and the curriculum, teaching, learning, assessment, all right from down from ECE to primary school to high school and then to the universities is all based in Fiji. When I did my bachelor's from University of the South Pacific in year 2000, I did Hindi like under Pacific Language Studies. Now there is a big debate coming in here, Fiji Hindi and the national Hindi language of Fiji. Which one is the Pacifica language? And as we know in New Zealand, the Pacifica languages, the government policy is there to support and help and see that, that language is being taught in the curriculum and it goes across to the community. And we are facing a lot of problem now, and the debate is going on between Fiji Hindi and the national Hindi of Fiji. So this is something I would like to people to think about to generate the interest, how to handle this situation. And the other two things that I just would like to quickly say about is the Fiji Girmit Center. I have already have proposed this to the GCI, that we must utilize that resource great which is sitting there. I've been listening to you, Sunil. You have touched that point that that has been like grants being given by other countries, and that is sitting there for us to take it on board. The other one is I have always been advocating to have the Girmit curriculum into the Fijian curriculum system, where the about Girmit is being taught. And PM Benny Barama has already touched this issue on last 3 years when he has given his speech, and he has requested and asked and urged the teachers to include the teaching of Girmit in schools. And I have gone through your questions there. It is alarming that our community, our generations and to come, they do not have knowledge of what Girmit is. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Satya, for explaining to us what the issues are. Is there anyone who would want to answer this question? It's a very serious question, I think. The issue of Fiji Hindi and normal Hindi, if I can say that. What is to be taught? My personal view is that any language that is taught should be taught in its good, proper form. How it is spoken and how it is propagated, and how the lingua franca builds up on it is a separate issue. Because learning language does great to the mental development of growing generations. So that's my view, but I'm open to this discussion. Parveen Lata said something. If she wants to add, she's now welcome to join. Is there any other question? There are no questions coming. I can see Farzana there. Farzana, would you want to comment on this issue?
So there is, I'm not sure exactly what the question is. It seems that people have strong opinions and there's no way of changing people's minds either way. If you look at the research, there is enough research done on Fiji Hindi to show that it has its own grammar, etc. It's not the same as the Hindi that is spoken in India, that's true. It developed on the plantations. However, the fact that we're able to speak and understand and communicate with each other, we're able to do that because the language does have grammar. It's got its own syntax, it's got its own morphology, phonology, etc. And as a linguist, I can show you all that. But
the same research has been done across the Girmit diasporas about the Girmit languages. Well done in Suriname, extremely well done. They've documented the language, they've gotten orthography, it's taught in school. So if we want to talk more about this, I think we need more engagement with the people from Suriname to actually understand what is so different about our Hindi, how does it connect us as a Girmit diaspora, because it is the point of connection, and why should it be valued? Or why should it be put aside? But again, this ties into people's identity and whether they see themselves more aligned with India, Pakistan, or with Fiji, which is where their identity lies.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Farjana. I think you have touched on this pretty well. It needs a lot of discussion. I think there has to be a lot of dialogue. There are headlines also on this issue. We would want to settle in the middle somewhere, but how the language is taught, I think we also need to draw lessons from the rest of the Girmitia diaspora around the world. What has happened in Mauritius, for instance. I'm not too sure about Guyana. Guyana is a different story. Trinidad is a place where Hindi was banned. It was illegal, and that is why Trinidadian Indians have lost their Hindi. These are some of the things which could come around for greater discussion. I think there are some headlines, but generally these discussions can go on, and how government policies go around it. It could be a political decision. Fiji Hindi developed from Bazaar Hindustani. That is why it is similar to Sarnami Hindi. I think this is what Bhagirathi Ban is saying. I think a comparative study of the varieties of Hindi will help us explore and learn about our languages and varieties. All right, point taken. Any other question?
Can I come in, Sunil?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Sunil, what I'm trying to propose and put to GCI to have a platform, where we can, as you have said, that we should actually have more, conversation on this issue, and we must, get a mutual understanding as to how we should go about. Now, the Fiji Hindi has been always there. No, I don't think so. Why it is being made so different, in and having its own perimeter. So it is very important that we have more dialogue and we create a platform like this where we can include the linguists and the academics, and we come out to some resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Satya, for your views on this. Are there any questions for Lomarsh or Vishnu? I thought there would be lots of questions for Vishnu. I do not want to close the session here. There are 36 of you participants. Please, if you do have any question.
If no one is actually, can you hear me, Sunil?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, if there is no one there and they can get into the queue, to talk about, I would just very briefly would like to, tell to the listener and the viewers that we are celebrating Hindi Language Week over here. We've been doing for so long, and there will be a presentation that I'm going to do it tomorrow at 8, I think it's 7:30 Fiji time. But our Hindi Language Week is being celebrated here from 25th to 29th of October, and I'm trying to get one participant from Fiji to participate. We are having virtual programs, and she will be, presenting the Birha and the Lok Geet and Ariwa, Kariwa, and all that. So yeah, we have doing a lot of advocacy for Hindi language over here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
This is Lomarsh. Listen, I find the discussion on Hindi in terms of not the maintenance of it or the retention of it from India to Fiji and how it pan out. And then the comparison to Suriname. I lived in Suriname for a while, and I admit I do not understand Hindi and I do not speak Hindi. Mainly because when I grew up in Guyana, Hindi was not taught in school, So it was lost in me and not me alone, my generation. And when I went to Suriname and people Suriname start talking to me, they're pretty much surprised that I did not know anything but Hindi. But over time, they recognize that a lot of Guyanese do not speak Hindi. And the younger generation, starting really from my generation onwards, do not express an interest in Hindi. They prefer more to speak the local dialect or the English language in terms like the United States or the wider Caribbean, because the influence of those languages are more in that region, in Guyana in particular, in terms of, attaining a job, to work in the civil service and so on. And working in civil service in Guyana, for example, is no place for Hindi. I mean, nobody recognizes it. So that adds to the sort of the diminishing role of Hindi as a medium of communication. Now, I like to pull on Dr. Bisram here in terms of, he spoke quite a bit of how Indian food like dal, flour, potatoes were banned during the PNC or the Burnham years in Guyana. I was wondering if he could elaborate whether that dictatorship had, what sort of impact the dictatorship had on Hindi or even Indian culture and identity. Are you there, Vishnu? No? Well, that is pretty much my question.
Yeah, hi, Vishnu, are you there? Hello? Hi, Vishnu, are you there? Okay. Reena wants to ask. Okay, we'll go to Vishnu. I can see him now. Vishnu, go ahead. Your mic is off. Vishnu, your mic is off. Please, can you put it on?
All right. So you're hearing me now? You're hearing me now?
Yes.
Okay, so there is no relationship really with the disappearance of Hindi among the Indo-Guyanese population and the banning of food. Hindi had begun to disappear way before that during the period of colonial rule, because unless you knew English, you would not be employed. Unless you were a Christian, you would not be employed. So therefore, people tried to shed their Hindi and Hindu background and Islamic background as well in order to gain state employment. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yes, it does answer the question in part, but I thought that the folks Burnham dictatorship extended that sort of diminishing role.
It did. For several years under Burnhamism, Hindi was not encouraged at all, not in the school, whereas he stressed the teaching of French and Spanish, and there are no Guyanese who are of French and Spanish background. The natural language would have been Hindi or Portuguese, because some Guyanese are Portuguese, but certainly not Spanish and certainly not French. So in that sense, one can blame Bornamism. Hindi could have easily been taught in the schools rather than marginalized and neglected completely. But the good news is that a lot of Indo-Guyanese have begun to learn the language. In fact, learn the language even when it was not fashionable to do so. In the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even up until today, the Indian Cultural Center does teach Hindi. The COVID has made it a bit difficult, but Hindi is being taught in some places.
Yeah, Vishnu, can I ask you one very pointed question?
Yes.
Did the banning of Hindi or getting it out of the school curricula, did it help in any way in the integration process? I mean, I would imagine that there was some, dimension to this, political dimension to this.
Did you say integration process or immigration process?
No, integration process.
Integration. There is still very little integration if you're speaking of racial integration in Ghana. Very, very little. I mean, it has increased over the years, but still it's small. People opted to migrate rather than integrate. And so that is why you find there are more Indo-Guyanese in the US than there are in Guyana.
Vishnu, I think he's referring to language integration. What happened to Hindi in the process, not only during the colonial period, where the Guyanese did not have that much of a say, but certainly during the post-independence period, there was this new awakening, this new nation, the building and so forth. And I think the question is, because of what happened, how come Hindi was not pulled alongside English language as a main medium of communication, like what happened in Suriname and learning now in Fiji?
Yeah, so language is very critical for civilization. And so therefore it is in the Bornham's interest to de-emphasize or marginalize and neglect the Hindi language. The goal of the Bornham regime has been to deculture the Indian, to creolize the Indian community. And that is why during the educational system on the Bornham, everything that was stressed was Creole related, meaning Afro related, as opposed to true multiculturalism. So there was no such thing as multicultural practices, whether in the school or in government programs. I mean, Lomarsh, you would have studied in Guyana, I think in high school and at the university as well?
I did not study at university when I studied overseas, but I finished high school in Guyana. I know where you're coming from. I just, you have the floor. So the question was related to you to answer.
Okay.
It. Yeah, I agree. I agree quite a bit. Listen, the message here and asking these questions really to have to spread the understanding of the impact of what Burnham had on Indians in Guyana. And I'm placing it in the context of language and identity. I'm sitting here listening at what happened to Fiji, even all that problems they have there, and all the problems they had in Suriname. Guyana's problem create more of a damage when I'm listening to this dialogue, this narrative on Indians. They've been more displaced, comparatively speaking.
Quite true, yes. I totally agree, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Vishnu, for your explanation of the issues in Ghana.
Thank you, Sunil. And here in New York, we are celebrating Navratri. So I'm heading for the mandir now to get my
All right. That is what.
And my
I thought depriving you of Hindi would help you
but
move away from it.
But the deprivation of Hindi did not stop me from practicing Hinduism.
Well, I see. My observation. I was in Trinidad for a while, for a week or so, and I observed that the Hindus in that in Trinidad were just as much Hindus as any Hindi-speaking Hindus, So they were having their puja and stuff on the national TV and all that kind of stuff, which even doesn't happen in Fiji,
Right.
So, okay. Anyway, we'll let Rina speak.
But the good news now is that through social media, all of the religious programs, whether it's Muslim or Hindu, are being broadcast live.
Okay. Great. Okay. So we have Rina.
It's been a pleasure participating, and I thank you all for the opportunity.
Okay. It was.
And I guess we'll meet for the next session.
Yeah, it was pleasure having you, Vishnu.
Have a good it's been a year and 8 months since I haven't seen you when I was in Fiji.
All right, we'll catch up. Huh? Thank you.
All right, yeah, nice. All the best. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'll have Rina to say what she wants to say.
Thank you. It was really interesting listening to the debates by Vishnu and Lomarsh, and I found, I wish it could go on and on. But going back to the Fiji Hindi and our identity, Fiji Hindi, my interpretation of Fiji Hindi is it has come up because of our indentured, our Girmitas from India. Our Indians came from different states of India, and therefore they brought their own dialects, their own languages, and so staying together. So it's a environmental factor as well, geographical factor as well. Now they had to stay together. The whole lot of people from different states would come, but they had to stay together, mingle around together, and so there emerged a new Hindi. It's a blend of all the state Hindi, whichever state people came from. And then with that blend came the native language, which is the Fijian language. And then more of it came the English part of it because of our British people there. And so because of our mingling around with the people and the environment as such, we ended up having this a unique Fiji Hindi, and which has become our identity. For example, there are some words that had been converted into Hindi, but by our Indians, and because they did not, they were not able to, especially from the English language, and they were not able to say the word as in English language, as said in English language. For example, for the cane top, right? The British would say, well, the English word is cane top, but what our Girmitians would say would be kantap. Kantap is a little modified by our Girmitians. And so today, even today, people, our own Indians, they use the word kantap. And there are many, many more examples of this. So this is where my understanding is that we have got this Fiji Hindi developed, and this is our identity. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an enriched Hindi. It's an enriched Hindi. So, so there you go. There are strong feelings about Fiji Hindi. Well, I think so. There would be equally strong feelings about real Hindi. The real Hindi meaning, the Shuddh Hindi or the pure Hindi or whatever. I'm not too sure, but I think this is open to further discussion and debate and discussion and dialogue and whatever you might say. Language definitely is a way of life also. So it is something nobody has got any monopoly on it. How we interpret it, how we move with it in future, how our young generation moves around this, I think we have to leave it to the evolution of language. But nonetheless, what we're going to teach to our kids in the schools, it is something that we need to decide on in terms of political decisions or government decisions or whatever it may be. And I'm not an expert on it, and there are people here who would probably have views on this. Do we have any other question? If we don't, Farzana, what do you say? Shall we close this?
I have one comment, Sunil.
Okay, go ahead, please.
This is Lomarsh. Listen, I'm very impressed with your presentation, Identity. I'm hoping, I was wondering if you have written an article on it, because I'm thinking I can use the same sort of methodology to do some work in Guyana among the Indian people there in terms of their understanding the history. The methods you use, I find it to be very interesting. So I just want to share that out in the open. So if I can contact you via email, I guess. But I'm very impressed with your findings.
Sure.
I like it.
Not a problem. Not a problem, Lomarsh. I will share it with you. We are still in the process of finalizing the article. We are still doing some more analysis, but surely we will be in touch, and I will share it with you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I concur, Lomarsh. And Sunil and Lomarsh, I know Moritz was also involved in something quite similar. So it would be great if we could do something across the Girmit diasporas.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, yeah, it's so great. This was an amazing panel. It's good to see. I mean, we won't always agree on everything, and we shouldn't agree on everything. Otherwise, the field will die. So it's lovely to see all the discussions that are happening, and it's all for the betterment of our field. So if we're done, we can take a break until the next session. Rajni is chairing the next session. And if you are that keen on language, you must come to the next session, which is about language and identity. So you can continue the conversations there. Thank you so much, Sunil. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you, Farzana. And thank you, everyone, all the listeners and viewers. Thanks, everyone, the presenters. It had been a great session for us. There are a number of issues still open. I'm sure our next conference will reopen these issues, and of course our communication will continue on these matters, and we will keep exchanging our knowledge and our ideas and views. It was a great session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sure you will enjoy the rest of the conference over the next two days. Thank you.